Hello, 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 people of the internet, and also the Freedom Astrologer here, and I'm sitting here again with my very good friend Donny, and he's a very gifted astrologer, intuitive. We've been doing these, intuitive psychic videos for a while, and now it's I think it's part 2 in our official series. And
Part two, yeah.
welcome Donny, and let's go into it.
Yeah, I mean, after our last video on clairvoyance, I actually received some messages here and there, and people are like, "Oh, you gotta do more of this and complete the series." But I just answered them well. Actually, clair abilities that can be up to like, if I recall, is up to 9 different things.
Yeah, sure.
So let's see if we can actually hit all 9. But honestly, I would just like to take this opportunity to say that the main 4 would actually adequately cover a lot of the rest, mainly clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, and claircognizance. Those will actually like adequately cover like the main groups of abilities. But I must also say that quite a number of significators are overlapping. So when you have, for example, like from the last video, you know that, or you definitely have some aspects of clairvoyance. Somehow or another, like the topic today, which is clairaudience, you will also somewhat embody some of that. When we talk about clairaudience, one of the first few things that come to my mind is the ability to perform automatic writing. For example, you can just sit down at a corner and just like have a notepad and stuff, and you can just kind of start getting like almost like downloads of information. It's almost like a channeling. It's a form of channeling, and also formal channeling, which is also a skill whereby you just close your eyes and you just can hear like words forming in your mind, and you can just kind of form messages via there. So when we talk about clairaudience, it's associated with telepathy, and it's the ability to hear very faint vibrational sound waves that emanate throughout the universe. And these sound waves resonate the vibrational patterns of people's thoughts and emotions. And more highly pitched frequencies or sound waves sustain information stored within the Akashic records. So people who have clairaudient capabilities, they can actually, when it's more developed and refined, they can actually read Akashic records. And people with clairaudient abilities can read this information. I'll just like to point out that unlike Braille, Braille, which is like reading through touch, people possessing clairaudience actually absorb this vibrational information through the middle ear. And clairaudience is usually activated by the development of the throat chakra. So when we talk about the throat chakra, we will think the signs of Mercury and Virgo. Sorry, the signs of Gemini and Virgo, and which are both ruled by Mercury, because the throat chakra is all about the communication channel that we are talking about. And I would say people who have clairaudience, some mystics actually refer to this ability as if you're hearing God or the word of God, or you can talk to God, for example, in that sense. And people who possess this clairaudient capability, somehow or another, at times they may be hearing disembodied voices in one's mind, sometimes externally in the environment. It can also come as a tingling or buzzing sensations in the ear. And you may be hearing sentences, words, and conversations in one's mind. And the voice seems to come from slightly above inside the mind, where because it's somehow linked to the center of the brain, the communication channel, and hence like you can hear stuff. You may also hear messages in songs as well, and other people's conversations, or read in books that are significant to you or your current situation. I've come across that in my life quite a bit. It's almost like divine timing comes and I pick up, be it a book, hear a song lyric, or someone talking beside me, and then it's like, oh my God, this exactly applies to my situation now, or what I need. Like this is almost like attraction of information to you. And what do you think on your end?
Yeah, I want to like give a couple of my, you know, experiences, personal experiences, also what I've seen and what I've observed in other people is it can be even like you're sitting with a person, let's say you're sitting with them, and maybe there's not even a conversation, not words exchange or anything, and suddenly like you hear this song going through your mind. It's like, I haven't heard this song in a really long time. You know, I have no idea where this is coming from. And it's like, like maybe there's a message here. And when you give that to that person, sometimes it's for you, sometimes it's for them. There's a very, you know, significant piece of information or you know, like you said, a lyric that will kind of switch something within the person or with you, that make like connect the dots and make sense of something they're, you know, dealing with in their lives. So this is one of the ways it's been working for myself, and I've seen others do that as well. And I wanted to also bring in dreams a little bit, because dreams are also important with clairaudience. And a lot of the times you can get a direct words in dreams, or again, like a song starts going going on in the dream, and you wake up and you're like, oh, like, okay, you know, this Justin Bieber song was just going on, and now I'm listening to it. Oh, the words, you know, the lyrics make so much sense to this situation that I'm going through in my life, and they're helping me understand and cope with it. But this is actually, you're tuning into something, you know, greater. I would say, like Donny mentioned, the Akashic records, and you know, the other realities and realms, and other people's energies and stuff like that. And you're picking up stuff from that. And you know, even if it is, you know, like a Justin Bieber song or whatever, like a pop song, it doesn't mean you're going crazy. It doesn't mean it's insignificant, even if you don't like mainstream music or whatever. But it's still like, give it a go and have a listen to it, because there's usually some form of message in it.
I would just like to add that usually, like when we talk about clairaudient messages, it is unlikely that it will come across as harsh or tormenting. Because I like to just contrast that with voices that people can hear who are perhaps suffering from certain psychological conditions, severe hormonal imbalances, or vitamin and mineral deficiencies. They can also, on some level, develop a hearing, but it's a different thing we are talking about. You know?
I think the difference is super important there.
Yeah.
How did you put it? Can you please repeat it? I think it was an interesting.
I mean, like when we talk about like clairaudient messages, it usually comes through with a tonality that's like, it's never harsh or tormenting. Is usually quite even and calm when it's presented to you. But for people, as I just mentioned before, who've got like psychological conditions, hormonal imbalances, you know, vitamin and mineral deficiencies, they can also hear stuff, and that's a whole different story by itself. Those are not under clairaudience. I just want to make sure that. Also, I also find that clairaudient messages usually comes in short little spurts. It can be a one word, it can be a number, or it can be a sentence, you know what I mean, or part of a phrase,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like I usually call it like when someone has got clairaudience ability, it's almost like the messages come as if Yoda from Star Wars is talking to you. like it's very cryptic, and sometimes it's like it's very metaphorical in a way, and you have to like somehow like just piece the pieces how that actually fits into your situation now and what you're going through and all that. Yeah.
I would like to add one piece with that. I really like how you put it with differentiating those voices. And one kind of practical advice I would have for people, what I've started using myself is whenever the kind of voice or, you know, whatever it is, your phrase, you know, is fear-based, there's kind of like, it comes from a place of, if you don't do this, you know, bad things are going to happen. What
Right.
I've started to understand here is very often this can be from, you know, even like the mind, like the fear-based mind is talking to you. And then these messages can be, you know, not the most accurate ones. So keep an eye out for that. Like literally, like Donny said, the tonality is I would say more softer, like a pleasant. There's like a pleasantness to the
There's a
voice.
calmness, and there's like
Calmness.
an even tone. It doesn't swing to extremes when it
Mhm.
comes to you.
Mhm.
Like, because when we talk about clairaudience or clear hearing, that's the definition. You can hear it both in your mind and also externally, and be it like as a voice inside your mind's eye or a noise that's outside of yourself. But altogether, I think we both agree that it is not something that is harsh or, you know, like a malefic in terms of its intent. You know what I mean? It just kind of shows you like I would call it an oracle,
Mhm. Yeah.
an oracle in a message form, and whether you take it or not, up to you. Yeah. Maybe the message can be like, wait until this is over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or make this a habit. You know what I mean? You know, like
Very, yeah.
it's short, sweet, and it's like it's almost like neutral in tonality. So I guess we've covered that part. And how would you, do you have anything to add?
I have one story. I'm itching to kind of share it because I want to share this story because, you know, some of those clairaudient and, you know, clairvoyant and everything in those realms can be tad crazy to the, you know, scientific left brain mind. So I want to just tell a short story about how things can get pretty weird quickly, but how to stay calm in it, and, you know, to see that it's not actually anything crazy. You're not going crazy. So basically what started happening to me around, I think it was around 2012, I started having these very, very intense dreams, very, very energetically charged dreams where I was kind of in between states of being. I was awake and not awake at the same time in those other realms, basically. Right. And what started happening in those realms, I started getting these energetic, let's say, I would call them in a way downloads or energy running through me. But what also started happening in that in between state was literally words and messages of what I can only, you know, compare to a human voice. You know, it wasn't anything, you know, super strange or like a weird, otherworldly voice. It was still like a voice. I could really strongly hear it, and it was giving me a lot of messages. And at first, I was really, you know, it was such a new thing to me. I had done, you know, astral traveling. I had gotten out of my body and stuff like that had happened already a little bit, you know, lucid dreaming. But you know, when you're sitting there and you're quite inexperienced in these matters, and you're like, the voice is coming, you know, the first thing is like, what the hell is going on? But in those moments when those kind of strange things can happen to you, you know, do your best to, again, to stay as calm as possible, because usually these voices, these things are giving you guidance. They're giving you, you know, things to use in your life, and how to move on with your life, and how to heal at times. And, you know, usually the feeling with these is always very, very positive. The energetics is very, very like wholesome, I would say, like a very, very good feeling, like anything I can describe. I haven't felt anything on this, you know, this realm. So usually when that is the case, things are good. You know, the messages are, you know, true for you. You know, I don't want to go into the negative parts, but whenever you start feeling, you know, bad or crappy, usually you need to start finishing that interaction in those realms. But just to, if you're experiencing something along those lines, doesn't mean you're crazy, doesn't mean you're going insane. You're connecting to other realms. Information is coming to you.
Yeah, and I guess to add on to that, as we proceed to the next segment, how to tell if you have the gift of clairaudience, I actually jotted down like certain questions that you may want to ask yourself to kind of start that process of identification, whether you do have it, that latent capability, and whether are you using it actively. I think the first question you have to ask yourself is that, do you experience things in life differently than other people around you? And have your experiences and perceptions led you to wonder if you may be picking up more of what is happening in the world surrounding you than most people? Because as with like any clair ability, you may be tapping into your clairaudience channel without even consciously realizing it or be aware of it. And if we go on to talk about signs that you may want to consider to determine if you are clairaudient in nature, I think one of the most subconscious or unconscious thing is that you tend to use the phrase such as "I hear you" or "I hear what you're saying" without even realizing you're saying it a lot, and because it's like a subconscious trigger in that way. And at times you may also hear your name being called, yet no one is there. Or you hear the radio and whispering in the distance when no one else does. Those will be the more like potentially spooky moments if you're not like careful with it. Or on a more mundane everyday level, it could be like you prefer to listen to, read, or research things, and you can learn on YouTube just by listening. You don't even need to hear, like you don't even need to like visually see it, just like kind of let the audio play by itself, and you can just learn via there. Or you could be impelled, or there's an inclination for you to be left alone with in a quiet space with a book to learn. Because when I think of someone with a clairaudient capability, usually their middle ear or the throat chakra area is more delicate, and when they go into really like noisy places, easily places where you easily get distracted by sensory overload in terms of sound, they get so easily flustered by that. On some level, there can be some kind of you hear buzzing or ringing that appears to come from nowhere. And if your clairaudient abilities are starting to open up. You might notice like a ringing sensation in your ears, or you can experience it like a change of pressure as well within your ears, particularly in the middle ear section. What other things can I say? One can also hear messages, which have a tendency to be a brief one that actually gets straight to the point. So what we just like discussed before. There can also be like a sudden inspiration. Doing the most mundane task, like cleaning your room, then you kind of like start getting like your throat chakra area, like your ears, start hearing stuff. On a more day-to-day level, it can also mean that music helps you connect better. Like for example, when I do readings, I usually have music playing in the background. That just helps me to tune into the alternate space in my head. Sometimes people can actually give you a compliment saying that you've got amazing hearing as well. Yeah. I also discovered that people who are clairaudient, usually they are more of a listener than a talker as well. For those who are more advanced, or somehow the sixth house or the sixth house ruler is tied into configurations of clairaudience, in which we'll cover later. There's a gravitation to connect with animals, and for more advanced people, there's actually like a telepathy kind of ability, which is clairaudient in nature, to talk to animals, even plants as well in the house. So
I wanna add one as well.
Yeah.
Which I've noticed is the person. Let's say you're sitting in maybe even in company. You have maybe even more than one person there, and then you're like, "Can you hear that?" Nobody's like, "No." And everybody else is like, "No," and they're like, in your mind, there's something going on, and there's a message coming, or there's a song, or whatever sound it is. You are the one that is picking it up, and that can be just a tiny indication that you're getting something there, or some messages from the other realms there.
Do you find also that people with clairaudient abilities, they tend to converse with themselves often?
Kind of.
Or mumble something out loud often. At times. This does not like, this is not a blanket statement, but I do have friends that I know that has got such capability that does that, but it's like maybe once in a blue moon,
I've noticed it. I have only one example from my material realm in my mind, but I've noticed it actually. I just don't have tons of examples of it right now.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think one of the last things I want to add before we move on is that you may also find yourself frequently troubleshooting what you say and calming yourself down with words, because having a clairaudient capability, it can potentially bring along anxiety on some level, and also some kind of mental stress as well if you're not handling it well, or there's like an innate inability to surrender to the process. It can be very tough. There's a flip side to it. So which outer planet would you think is very resembles a lot on clairaudience?
Well, I would put Uranus there.
The higher octave of Mercury.
That's the other connectors there, because guys, Mercury is a lot to do with messages and communication, and when we're talking about these capabilities or abilities, then we're want to raise the octave or the vibration or whatever. And Uranus is just that. This is the higher octave of Mercury, and then the messages or the communication with Uranus, I would say, is of a higher quality. maybe if you want to say that, of a higher vibration, because Uranus is also waves and wavelengths and vibrations,
Frequencies.
yeah.
Frequencies.
So this is one of the reasons why Uranus is so much connected to clairaudience.
Right. Well, I think also, as a side note, Uranus is also the planet of surprise and sudden insights. So natives who've got very prominent Uranus feature in their chart, on one hand, they will experience eureka moments, because when I think about clairaudience, it does bring along with it extra sensory knowledge as well, which is what Uranus represents. But then when you talk about Uranus as well, it's like the super consciousness as well that's represented by Uranus. And so like it takes some time to process stuff mentally. When we talk about a prominent Uranus, that points to clairaudient capabilities. And when we talk about the lower octave of Uranus, which is Mercury, this is where you kind of need your Mercury to formulate what's going on.
Make it more of material, make it more practical, you mean?
I suppose make some sense out of it as well. Because Mercury actually is the like, how do we see things like on the more 3D plane, I would say.
Yeah.
So you've got all this like eureka moments or this sudden like flash of messages and words and numbers and voices that's talking to us, and when these insights come out of the blue, how does your mental faculty, your mental processing faculty, which is more Mercury in nature, string it together to somewhat make it make sense out of it all. And yeah, do you have any examples to add to that?
I think most of what I wanted to say, or I think we already covered in this kind of introductory, place for Mercury and Uranus. We mentioned sudden downloads of information, sound or voice, message, suddenly hearing something. I think we covered all that. Like the Uranus, what I wanted to say, because it's now touching on a little bit about, the clairvoyance and all types of getting messages, is because you mentioned, the making sense and Mercury and combining those, because Uranus is like, let's say if you have a Uranus transiting as well, like Uranus transiting the first or the ascendant, the things you might hear can be really strange, really weird, really otherworldly, like a new level. So that can, again, I don't want to say make you crazy, but it needs it sounds too dramatic, but it needs, again, it needs that groundedness, that it needs that practicality, reality, bringing those things into the 3D and like getting used to those. And even like, because those messages can be pretty weird, it's even hard to make sense of them and make it useful in the practical world. You're getting all these sounds and weird things, but in the end, in my opinion, it's still like the end goal should be to bring these into the everyday realm, like the everyday practical activities, which is Mercury and Virgo as well. And just we need to ground these experiences.
And Uranus naturally is the co-ruler of Aquarius, and by zodiac sign is actually quincunx or inconjunct 6 signs away to Virgo. And so it will take some practice when it's like 6 signs away. And it's almost like a bit of that Saturnian thing as well. As you go through it more and more, you kind of get a hang of it.
Totally. It needs practice.
Yeah.
It needs getting used to.
Yes, when something's in conjunct, it's like things will kind of always show up until you get it right by practice. And when we think about Aquarius and Virgo, they are 6 signs away, like in the zodiac wheel. So there's that opportunity for you to, okay, like, you know, hit me once, hit me twice, hit me 3 times, and I'll know what to do. You know what I mean? Like, like those kind of energy. So I think I just want to add that in the previous video, clairvoyance and clairaudience are very much interlinked, because clairvoyance is more about the third eye, and clairaudience is about the throat chakra, and they're so closely linked. It's the upper chakras. And this stems from an astrological perspective, because like significators can overlap quite a bit here. So from the previous video, if you found out that you've got clairvoyant capabilities, somewhat or another on some level, there may be some elements of clairaudience within you as well. Yeah. And this kind of brings me to my next point, like, since we're talking about Uranus as the main outer planet that talks about clairaudience, when the moon or Mercury are aligned with Uranus, this can really, you can actually use this skill of clairaudience as a part of your everyday experience. And when I've actually seen people with Neptune paired with Uranus, that can, that's quite indicative of this ability too. So people who are born with like Neptune, Uranus together,
I would say
yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely with the Neptune and Uranus connection there, and Uranus and Mercury. I would to say this is important. Uranus or Mercury in the 8th or 12th house is very much indicative of this as well, in important places. 3rd and 9th, I wanted to say as well.
And the
houses.
first house.
First house, yes, totally first house as well.
Yeah.
Like a prominent Uranus in the first. And especially if it rules, for example, the 12th or the 8th even would kind of add to it.
Oh yeah, it can also be like that by house rulership. Those 2 planets are connected, right?
Yeah.
I've actually written here that Mercury in Aquarius or Pisces.
Nice, yes, very important.
Yeah, or like what Ian said earlier, you know, in the 8th and 12th house. It may not be your Mercury is in Pisces or Aquarius, but in the 8th and 12th house, it can give like a hint, like a flavor of that. Mercury in aspect to outer planets. This can be Uranus mainly, but I've also seen like Neptune and Pluto can give that as well.
I want to mention one of my, I guess, favorite ones with this, right, or maybe the strongest ones. Right. But it's difficult to say if it's really, you know, the strongest, or, you know, put them in a, you know,
well, I suppose we can just give them a whole list, and then the more that you have, the more probable that, you know, you have that within you somehow. Yeah.
And now what I wanted to say is Uranus and Mercury conjunct in the 3rd house, and the moon also there in the 3rd house as well. If you have that, you probably have a bunch of those gifts, but there is a very, very strong sense that you will have that, at least part of that clairaudient capability there as well.
So I've also written here like moon in the 3rd, 8th, or 12th house placements, and also like moon in Venus root signs. That means Taurus or Libra in aspect to outer planets as well. And since we're talking about clairaudience, which is kind of like a communicative, airy kind of, if I were to assign an element to clairaudience, is like somewhat like clairvoyance as well. It's like very airy, very communicative. So I've also written here that Moon or Venus in an air sign in water houses 4th, 8, and 12 can also give that as well, as kind of like an extension of an indicator.
Yeah, I really like that you say that, because Venus is, guys, Venus is sound, Venus is music,
Yeah.
you know, so that's it's not doesn't always have to be those, you know, what we consider always the spiritual, you know, planets or whatever. It can be it can be Venus, you know, bringing in that sound or music. But I would love if Venus would have like an aspect, you know, from Neptune or the 12th house ruler or something to kind of add to that Venus in that. Of course, the air sign already adds, but maybe there's an aspect from, you know, Neptune, Uranus conjunction somewhere, something that will all add to that Venus side of things.
Like be house rulerships, or like it can be like I've actually came across a client who's got Venus and Neptune in mutual reception.
Oh, nice.
That can also give some form of a linkage there. But if you're talking about Venus Neptune aspects or Moon Neptune aspects, we are talking about like the conjunction, sextile, square, trine, opposition, and for those people who like to use also like quintile and biquintile, and the last but not least, quindecile, which is 165-degree aspect. It can also bring somewhat of that ability with it, that clairaudient ability. How about the notes?
Well, the notes, yeah. I would say, again, they kind of need to be, or they don't need to be connected, but
it can be part of the story.
Part of the story, I would say.
Yeah.
Again, the usual houses, I would say, is 12th, very much the south node or north node in the 12th, 8th also. I don't have a great example of this, but I'm thinking the 3rd and 9th maybe.
I've put down here south node in 3rd or 9th house, preferably in a water sign. That can also bring some of that with it. Since we're talking about clairaudience, the south node can also be an air sign as well, in the 3rd and 9th house, for that matter. Yeah. And I've also put here that because we're talking about sensory perception, right? The 5 senses, so it's very much like a 3rd house kind of energy. So I've also put down like Uranus in the 3rd house.
Oh, yes.
With aspects to personal planets. Neptune in the 3rd house as well. Somehow linked via connected via aspects to other personal planets in your chart, or via like a ruler of an important house that we talk about, like 4th, 8th, 12th, 3rd, 9th, and 1st. Stelliums, 3rd house stellium and 9th house stellium. Like I've found that one like having that clairaudient like impact as well on the person.
I want to add 8th and 12th as well, stelliums there.
Yeah,
because if you have 8th or 12th there as well, I think like the clair abilities are abundant, you know, and most likely it's going to be clairaudient as well.
And I think the last point that I've jotted down is from a client's example. Like she is Gemini rising with Mercury in a water sign and is aspected to the outer planets. If I'm not wrong, her Mercury in water sign is actually connected via aspects to all 3 outer planets. Okay. That's her ascendant ruler.
So a lot of things coming in there.
Yeah, I mean, she's been lost for quite a long time until she attended workshops to kind of put like explanations how she's feeling and give like her experiences some context that, oh, okay, like this is what it's about, you know, and all that.
Nice.
Yeah, I think that's all from my end, like thus far.
I have one more personal story I would like to
Yeah.
share, because this is one of the examples I brought here because it's very practical. It might not seem much at first glance, but I think I want to share this because it's important to show how this can work in real, practical, tangible, everyday activity life. Now, it was a couple of years ago. I was at a grocery store. I was, I think I was driving somewhere to my family's country home, and I was standing there with my grocery, bag full, and I was waiting to check out and pay for my groceries. But the thing was, there was only like I think there were two registers open, and the place was quite packed. So I was behind, like pretty well back behind the line, And I was just minding my own business. I wasn't doing anything, super spiritual. I wasn't doing like praying or meditating in that line. I was just minding my business, looking at people, waiting my turn. And what started happening is, suddenly my glance went like it was almost like I had to look at the next register. And I was looking at the next register, and it was closed. There was even a sign that it's closed. And suddenly I heard a voice as like, "Go now, go there, go now." And at first I was like, "Ooh, no, because it's closed and I would lose my spot in the, I don't want to wait. I wanted to get out of there. And then the voice was, "Go now, go now, go now." I was like, and I think I had just done, kind of like learning to trust these kind of voices and things, a course and the mentorship stuff. And I was like, actually, I was like, fuck. I was like, fuck. Okay. But I went anyway. And I was like, seemed so weird for my logical mind because there was nobody there. There was a lot of people around me. I was literally like even thinking that they would think that I'm crazy, that I'm going there just to, stand there. But the second, basically, I made that first step towards that register, the lady that's the other employee came from behind the, wherever they spend their breaks. The minute I stepped into that register, the lady came and opened up the register, and I was the first one there, and I got really easily. The conversation was great. Everything was great. Just I wanted to give you the guys this because these voices can seem very strange. They can seem crazy, especially to the logical, like, whoa, no, mind. And what you can do is start to test it out in easier scenarios, like literally very grounded scenarios when there's no danger, there's no kind of bad things can happen. Simple scenarios, and trust this, and you can see
I have a
life.
question for you though.
Go
Do you
ahead.
reckon that because the voice actually originates from within you and not from like outer
Mm-hmm.
circumstances, now that you've got like all these experiences that you've like accumulated,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that it's actually your intuition or higher self that's voicing things to you or sending you messages?
I've been, I've been thinking about this for a very long time. It's very hard for me to kind of say 100%, this is my higher self, or this is,
Your intuition talking to
or
you.
in my intuition.
Right.
It's very hard for me to differentiate between this, but literally, like what we talked about during those beginning moments where like the tonality is different, the kind of
Mm.
guidance is different, like it's more pleasant. It's like, go now, go. There's nothing like, there's no forcefulness, but it's still like, go. And I guess I hope it's my higher self in a way, and
Yeah.
maybe in a mixture with my intuition. That's the best I can give you with my logical and scientific mind as well.
How much of that Virgo-ish discernment capability have you developed like along the years? Has it
Mm.
gotten like better or
Oh, a lot better,
a
a
lot
lot
better?
better,
Okay.
because it's again like the practicing, like learning to practice, learning to
Yeah.
let go a little bit, use that side, but let go and trust as well. I guess my best advice with when you have South Node in Virgo and North Node in Pisces. It's like, yeah, think about it, but then let go and trust and use that intuition, higher self connection there.
Yeah, I mean, like we're talking about extra sensory stuff, right? So it's like sometimes it's like if we just go into that straight away, go into that fear or try to like psychoanalyze every single little thing, then it's just gonna drive us crazy.
Totally agree. Need to let go of that.
Do you have any charts to kind of show that what we are talking about, or the significators?
Oh yeah,
I guess
guys.
that would be helpful for the audience too.
Guys, this time we have examples. Let's see.
Right.
Beep boop. Can you see it?
Yep.
So Edgar Casey. I picked this one like almost by accident today. But something in me was kind of like wanting to make it more tangible, wanting to show something, I don't know, make kind of like even prove the things we are talking about here.
Right.
And one of the biggest names, let's say, in the spiritual channeling, clairvoyant, clairaudient world ever, I would say, is Edgar Casey. And I went to check his chart, and this is a whole sign chart. You can also check Placidus. I check both. Both are pretty good examples. Yeah. But maybe the whole sign really drives this point home. Is the first thing we can see here is I almost lied. The first thing I saw actually was this stellium, intense stellium in the 8th house with the North Node in the sign of Pisces. Like, even if you don't have any other indications and you have this, I would say there's a pretty good chance you're quite plugged in, you're quite connected. There's some form of clairvoyance, messages, intuitions, a lot of stuff happening already there.
And the ruler of that Pisces stellium, co-ruler, Neptune, is in Placidus 9th, but whole sign 10th. So that can be employed in the outer world as kind of like a vocational skill.
And they can be known. Talent. They can be known for this as well.
They can be known for that, yeah. But thank God for that Neptune in the grounded sign of Taurus.
I'm really glad. I'm actually really glad you pointed this out. But because one of the things, I think this is my idea of how things here work is, you guys, when you have so much of this water energy, it can be sometimes so, you can be so open to these realms and and getting so many messages without the earth. You can see there's so much earth in his chart, actually. Mars, Jupiter, Neptune, with Moon, Pluto, all in earth signs. So this is actually a pretty good indication that you can also ground these kind of weird senses, weird messages. You make sense of these and actually offer these to the people, offer these to the public, which Edgar, quite nicely did in his lifetime.
And I think if we consider the traditional and modern ruler, Jupiter and Neptune, which both co-rule Pisces, they are both in Earth sign and trining each other close to exact. Mm-hmm. And they are also in 6th and 10th house, which are, two of the vocational houses beside the second. So that's how, you can employ all your Pisces 8th house stellium energy in a practical way, which is the 6th and 10th house domain. And not to mention, I see a very clear clairaudience, capable ability because of that Uranus quite close to the ascendant.
Yeah, this is
and just to piggyback what we just mentioned earlier, like the 3rd house, which is about hearing and seeing. 3rd house starts in a sign of Libra, which is a Venus root sign.
Air.
and Venus is exalted in the 8th house of the invisible realm.
There's so many connections in this chart. It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah,
It's
yeah. I
crazy.
think that Stellium kind of sums it all a lot, and not to forget, also Pluto is quite close to the midheaven
Yes.
as well, and we've got Uranus square Pluto. Although it's a square, but when we talk about Uranus Pluto, it's even more of a telltale sign of a clairaudient capability as well.
You know, I want to also say ruler of the 12th, the moon exalted really near to the MC in the 10th house. Again, like, known for this, you know, very popular about this. I mean,
and since we're talking about natal moon, I
spiritual
usually
things.
give it like a slightly larger orb, and it's involved in that square of Uranus on ascendant and Pluto on midheaven. Yeah.
So guys, if you have if you have anything, you know, from this, you can probably already get some type of messages. Obviously, this chart is you know all about this. So you know, not a lot. I think not a crazy amount of people have this amount of, you know, stelliums and things connected. But still, if you pick up some things, you can start. I guess seeing yourself more deeply, I would say, in when regarding those psychic intuitive areas.
Yeah, I've actually got an example as well.
Nice.
Gotten this chart, Albert Benjamin, or also known as CC Zane, and just a little background regarding this person. He's the author of the Church of Light Lessons in Astrology, Tarot, and other esoteric subjects. And his work actually provided a foundation for astrological education in the USA for several decades. And if we actually look at his chart, of any telltale signs of like clairaudient capabilities, first and foremost, you can see there's a lot of inner planets in the sign of Sagittarius. In the first house, I'm using Placidus house system, not whole sign. But then you can see in this person's case that Uranus is also angular.
MC.
Conjunct the MC. And then the ruler of that Uranus, which is Mercury, is in Sagittarius as part of that stellium with Venus, Mars, and the Sun.
And in the
So
house
there's
of joy,
really like a
house of joy, Mercury as well.
Yes, house of joy in the first house, and Mercury is a mutual reception with Jupiter, which means Mercury and Jupiter are occupying each other's signs, so they are talking to each other in that sense. What else can I see?
North Node in the 12th in Scorpio, I would say as well.
North Node in North Node in the 12th in a water sign.
In a water sign.
In a water sign some more. And what else do we have? Oh, okay. Let's talk about aspect patterns, because I need to also talk about like aspect patterns, because usually I give the moon slightly a slightly larger orb, because we're talking about the moon here, which moves pretty fast as a planetary body.
So how much do you give? Just by I'm curious.
Actually, about 10 degrees
10-ish.
each side.
Good.
10 degrees. So if I actually give 10 degrees, then that moon and Uranus actually is a trine. And if I give 10 degrees, actually there is a grand trine going on from Uranus to the moon, and from Uranus to Saturn and Neptune. And then from Saturn and Neptune, they both also form a trine to the moon. So it's like a grand trine, grand earth trine. So it gives you some kind of grounding of sorts.
You know, Donny,
Uh,
sorry, you know what we haven't mentioned? I think in none of our videos, we actually haven't mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong, but we haven't mentioned the stellium in Sagittarius. Because that is a very...
because like I think we mentioned something about like Jupiter being like um what do you call it?
easy access.
Like Sagittarius rising and all that. But if I were to just point out, like I think we're gonna cover in subsequent episodes.
Nice.
Because when I think if I were to choose a planet that actually talks and assign that to a certain clair ability, I would say that claircognizance will be ruled by Jupiter mainly. But you know, till we hit the episode later. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so we have a grand Earth trine with like 4 planets, Moon as the only personal planet, but yet it's a very important planet to look at when we talk about clair abilities. That's like connected to Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus. That is already one of the indicators. And then we've got a T square, which involves the stellium in Sagittarius, opposing that Jupiter, all squaring and pointing to that Uranus on the MC. So it's like 2 aspect patterns that has like Uranus involved, and then the T square just kind of bring that laser focus to that Uranus.
I want to say it's a bit wide, but Mercury is also square in that square with that Uranus. It's 6 degrees.
Oh, usually square I give 8 degrees, so it's well within orb. Yeah. Maybe Venus is a bit far, but
so like sign-based Venus.
Yeah, but sign-based definitely. And so you've got like all this like 2 aspect patterns, a grand Earth trine if we allow wider orb for the moon, and a T square, a mutable T square.
Did you mention he was because I don't know this person actually.
Right.
Was he like a cult leader or something? Did you mention that or?
I mean, he basically like served as a very important person to kind of build the foundation for astrological education in the USA for several decades. Yeah.
Okay. No. So not a cult leader, basically.
You can say that because the thing is that I mean when we talk about a cult, right?
Oh my God.
Occult responsibilities, isn't that Neptune and Saturn? Occult is Neptune. Responsibilities is Saturn. That's in that Earth grand trine with the moon and Uranus.
I was just looking at that North Node in Scorpio.
Yeah.
And I mean, that can, in the 12th.
And Pluto is also angular, which co-rules Scorpio as well. And Pluto is together with Chiron, another intuitive marker, which I mentioned, I think, like 2 episodes ago. Chiron is also involved.
But do you know about his history? Did he like get abusive or no? Was he like considered like a wholesome cult leader or a teacher?
I didn't really like read like the whole bio, but I know that he's a very instrumental person in the 1900s for like like be astrology, tarot as well. When someone who's a tarot reader, usually they've got some form of clairvoyance, clairaudience, just name a few, or clair sentience and cognizance. I think we'll go on to that, in subsequent episodes, and other esoteric subjects. So, I mean, if we talk about clairvoyance, to bring it back, the 3rd Placidus house would be Aquarius,
and the ruler
which is already a very clairaudience sign. Because we talked about earlier Uranus as the main planet we look at for clairaudience, and the ruler is Uranus. That's heavily emphasized in the 10th house with the MC or midheaven. And if we look at the traditional ruler of Aquarius, which is Saturn, it's together with the occult planet of Neptune.
Is that a square from Jupiter as well? Oh yeah, yeah, of course. It's from to the Uranus, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So occult responsibilities for work. and actually that T square, although it's like hard aspects, it does give that dynamic action to really pull his Earth Grand Trine into motion.
It's I'm again glad you mentioned it, because again, this person, remember guys, we from the previous example, that person also had Earth in it as well. So it's kind of good for them, or easier for them, to ground that, you know, weird, whatever you want to call it, energy into the earthly realm. So you can look out for those things as well, like supportive earthly aspects, let's say, or positions,
or even houses.
Or houses, yeah.
Yeah.
To help you kind of ground that, your unique weirdness into the earthly material realm.
I mean, in this case, thank God the common denominator of that white grand Earth trine and that T square is that Uranus in the analytical sign, analytical Earth sign of Virgo. So that kind of helped him along pretty well. Because Virgo, as we know, is about the discernment, right? So I've actually seen people with Uranus that's like angular in the 10th house, like exactly conjunct the MC, that they can have a word with God. Yeah, I would call that. And they can receive the word from God. Because the midheaven is really like the highest part of the sky at the time that you were born. And Uranus is like really high up there in the sky. So it's like you're talking to the sky gods.
Yeah.
And also receiving their messages as well.
Exactly. You're getting downloads from them. You're getting...
Almost. Yeah. I've also seen people like Uranus angular in the 10th house, or like even better conjunct the MC, that they're channelers. And for his case, he's got that square between the higher octave of Mercury, which is Uranus, and Mercury itself.
And Mercury is in Sagittarius.
Yes, and Mercury is in mutual reception. Mercury is in mutual reception with Jupiter.
With ye good old Jupiter there.
You know?
Yeah.
So like all three are linked. So this is a very interesting chart to kind of bring this episode to a close.
Oh yeah. Covered a lot again, I think. And guys, let us know if you enjoyed those, chart examples as well, because we'll probably bring more of those anyway. But yeah, let us know in the comments what you think.
Yeah, because I find illustration from examples would be very useful for like this is like for people who are not able to visualize it. This can really be like a much easier way to absorb information of, especially the astro-significators portion of this video.
Because it's sometimes very detailed and analytical and more left-brained, guys, as well, and this will help you all kind of ground it into the earth, hopefully.
So to the next episode, Ian.
until we do this again, guys, we're planning on doing at least a couple of more of these, and we'll see from that,
at least the main clair abilities, the main ones that people are familiar with.
And guys, if you want to get a reading with me or Donny, or a consultation, the links will be in the description box below. Just click on those, and we will be glad to help you with anything.
And see you next time.
See you next time. Bye, guys.
Bye.